Hello, I'm Craig Houliston from Nielsen IQ, and today I'm going to share more about some of the big beverage trends we're seeing across Asia. Over the last 20 months, we've seen a very dynamic change in FMCG with categories such as alcohol really thriving across the market. We're also seeing coffee and tea also booming across Asia. However, we also do see challenges as people don't go out as much. People are not consuming a lot of the on-the-go ready-to-drink beverages. So today what we're going to do is share some of the FMCG trends in Asia and how beverage is comparing, and hopefully give you some ideas on where the future growth will come. So let me share some of my content. Okay. So today we'll be sharing more about the retail to rebound. So over the next 20 minutes, what we'll be sharing will be how to win in FMCG and beverages and alcohol across Asia, and hopefully give you some ideas on both some short-term and the long-term trends. We'll also be seeing how things vary across Asia, because Asia is very diverse, and what we're seeing is that there is a lot of difference given the COVID situation in terms of FMCG and beverage. We'll also be sharing how do the beverage categories such as alcohol, non-alcoholic beverages, hot drinks, how are they comparing against other super categories, and what can we learn there, and where can there be further opportunities? And we'll also be diagnosing some of the fastest growing beverage categories to watch out for. And then we'll bring it back in terms of giving some ideas on what we think the opportunities are for beverages in the short term and the long term. So let's start by looking about what's happening in FMCG in Asia. So actually, last year in 2020, FMCG was pretty flat given the COVID situation. But the great news we're seeing is that FMCG is bouncing back in growth. One of the key things that we're going to share with you at Nielsen IQ is we actually believe that when analyzing 2021 data, it's worthwhile comparing against both 2020 and 2019. Because actually, if you compare 2021 versus 2020, it actually tells you more about 2020 than it does about 2021. So it's always good to benchmark it against a more normal year, such as 2019. And one case is by looking at Singapore data here. If you actually compare Singapore FMCG against 2020, we can actually see a decline. The reason being is that in 2020, Singapore saw record growth. However, if you compare it against 2019, you actually see it's the fastest growing FMCG market along with India. We also see healthy growth from China as China bounced back to a new normal, and also very healthy growth in North Asia with South Korea and Taiwan. These markets are the markets which are rebounding. The next stage in terms of the growth are the markets which are rebooting, so the Indonesia and Malaysia, where the growth may not be back to the 2019 levels, but they're starting to come back from some decline and are starting to stabilize. And what we foresee is that probably in the next 9 months or so, they should be rebounding. And then you have the other end of the scale. You have those markets which probably need a degree of reinvention. So it could be that you see still declines in the market. It could be markets like Myanmar and Hong Kong, which have got external factors such as the political instability in Myanmar and Hong Kong being highly dependent on mainland China. But you also see areas of Southeast Asia, especially Thailand and the Philippines, which are quite reliant on tourists. And again, that will be a big factor in terms of rejuvenation, because again, categories like beverages are highly reliant on things like tourism, as a lot of the consumption is out of home. So now let's look at what's happening in terms of the super categories. So on the left-hand side, you can see a bubble chart, and it's on the y-axis, it looks at the 2020 growth, and on the x-axis, it's looking at the H1 2021 versus 2019. If you look at the top right quadrant, you can see essentially the categories which are growing faster. So what we are seeing are things like oral and personal care and packaged food doing very well in Asia. However, what we can see is that alcohol is performing slightly better than beverages. So alcohol has benefited in terms of retail because a lot of the out-of-home consumption has moved into home, and that's understandable. And we can see very healthy growth when you look at 2021 versus 2020, and even when you compare it against 2019. So alcoholic beverages in Asia are growing 6.4%. However, non-alcoholic beverages have found it a bit more tougher. Again, what we're finding at Nielsen IQ is that a lot of that consumption may not have transcended from out of home into home. We have seen some differences across the board that categories like coffee have shifted a lot of that out of home consumption into home. But for things such as carbonated soft drinks, people haven't really necessarily brought that out of home consumption of when they've been on the go, taking that beverage and bring it into home. And again, that will be one of the challenges we are seeing. When we look at the performances of different food and beverage categories across a few select markets in Asia, this is looking at the value growth. And the first data point is for full year 2020 versus 2019. And then we're looking at Q1 21 versus 2 years ago, 2019, because it's a more fair base, and Q2 against the corresponding period as well. What can we see is that, first of all, it's worth noting that packaged food is still the biggest outperformer. And that's the reason being is that people will be moving a lot of their meals into home. So a lot of these cooking ingredients are doing very well. But this actually has a big impact on beverages, because if people are moving their meals into home, then the beverages that they're consuming with their meals will also follow into home. However, there are some variances. What we can see is that the red line reflects alcohol. And in markets like Singapore and China, there is very healthy growth for alcohol. However, it's less so in a market like Thailand. If we look at non-alcoholic beverages, which is the navy blue line, the good news is that in a market like China, we can see a rebound, that as things do open up, there will be a shift towards beverages growing again. And we can see that it's starting to bounce back. And in India, it's also the case. And we do see some better performance comparatively, even in a market like Thailand. However, it is more challenging in a market like Singapore. So again, the key outtake here is that, as the markets do come back and you see a market like China, it does bode well for both non-alcoholic and alcoholic beverages. So let's talk about what it means to consumers. So at Nielsen IQ, what we've identified are there are two buckets in terms of different types of consumers. There are those who are constrained, those who are going to be under more financial burdens, and those who are more insulated, those who are probably less affected. Actually, what we've tried to do is take it a bit deeper by looking at those consumers who are always constrained, and what we're deeming here as existing constrained. And these are people who have always been under employment and income challenges. And at the other end of the spectrum, you have those who've always been not restricted in terms of being insulated. Those people who always can buy whatever they want. But what's really interesting is this middle bucket, those who are newly constrained and those who are cautiously insulated. They're people who may be facing challenges, or they may not be, but they're going to change their consumer behavior because of the situation that COVID has brought to us. And actually what we can see at Nielsen IQ is that 85% of Asians are cost-conscious consumers, and thus are altering their buying and consumer behavior. So 58% are newly constrained. So they're people who were not previously uncertain about their economic future, probably were not worried about their jobs, but now because of the situation are worried. And because of that, they are going to change some of their behavior. And that could be deprioritizing certain categories, trading down. And there's also worth noting that they're also cautious, insulated people. These people may not necessarily have a lot of financial pressure. However, they are going to become a bit more cautious because of the economic environment. And we can see variances across the markets. In a market like Indonesia, you can see 73% of consumers are now saying they are newly constrained. So again, they will be looking to change some of their consumer behavior. And if we just bring it back to the previous slide, we can obviously see that they are prioritizing more areas such as packaged food. So again, this could be a challenge for both beverages. However, what we do see is there are opportunities. So I'm going to talk here about some of 5 trends that we're seeing across Asia in 2021 and what we believe to be trends over the next few years. And actually, I'll bring it back in terms of what it means for both insulated and constrained. So let's start off with convenience. Convenience is not a new trend. This is what we've been talking about for years. However, in the past, we were always talking about convenience being people going to convenience stores. However, as people are not going out on the streets, they're not necessarily going as much to the 7-Elevens of this world. And obviously, this is big for a beverage market. However, the convenience has now evolved. It now means new routes to market. Convenience could mean things such as direct to consumer or subscription models. That means that rather than going through retail, there could be opportunities for big manufacturers to go directly to the consumer, cut out the middleman, give exclusive deals. From that, you can collect a lot of data, do targeted promotions, and it's a great way to also beat the competition, because if people are buying from either direct to consumer or by subscription model, you can ensure that they can get that 12-pack of a beverage every month, and they can get it at a better deal, and they don't have to worry about it. And again, it's convenient because it gets moved to their home, which is also now their office. But also, for those who are more constrained, there is also other ways that they can have convenience. Maybe they can't afford such a thing such as direct-to-consumer subscription. And maybe convenience could be things such as some of the dynamics we're seeing in markets like the Philippines, where we're seeing people starting to barter online on things like Facebook, where this is a convenient way for people to exchange maybe some of the things they have at their home, such as maybe some clothing, to exchange it for things such as shopping, such as beverages. So again, there are now more convenient ways for people to buy things through some of these social media, but it's for the people who are more constrained, it could be things such as bartering. The next one we'll touch on is about homebound. We all know that people are spending more and more time at home. Some of it is due to lockdowns that we're seeing in current markets such as Vietnam, where it's very restricted at the moment. However, we also see that in the future, people will be spending more time at home as we have more of a hybrid working arrangement. And homebound can have a different impact on different people. So again, for insulated people, it could be moving some of that out-of-home experience into home. We know that bubble tea is a big trend in Asia. And what we're starting to see is a lot of innovation around that. So even if you look at dairy products, we're starting to see things such as brown sugar milk coming to the market so people can make their own bubble tea at home. Whereas for people who are more constrained, it could be about making some sacrifices. It could be the potential impact of maybe having less occasions, maybe rather than not being able to afford being able to have both breakfast and lunch, they might just have one meal, a brunch, because they're at home and save on that. Again, that would have an impact on beverages. Maybe people may not be having a juice at lunch, a juice at breakfast, and a water at lunch. They might be combining it just for one drink, or they might be looking for something to help them get through the day, such as something which can give them more energy instead of working longer hours. So again, there's a lot of opportunity there. In terms of alternative, we know that there are trends such as plant-based beverages are doing very well in the market. And again, this is whether it's for people's dietary requirements or people who are looking for more sustainable beverages. These are definitely trends that we're seeing for the more insulated. And for people who are more constrained, it could be things like refill packs. Again, we've talked about coffee being one of the big winners. If people are consuming more and more coffee, they might be looking at refill packs. Refill packs aren't necessarily just a sustainability drive, but they can also bring affordability to consumers. Again, less packaging equals less cost. And again, that could be an opportunity to help bring more economies of scale. We've also seen trends that maybe boxed wine may be a trend. Wine is doing phenomenally well, but again, as people become more constrained, they might be looking for cheaper packaging, which can bring them more affordability and also be more sustainability as a bonus. The next one is around natural. Again, Asians are stating that they want to try more natural products. Again, that could be things such as more 100% juice coming more into the market, or less additives for many beverages. We know that in Asia and globally, there's a big trend towards trying to do less advertising for high sugar drinks, and there will be a gradual shift towards more low sugar beverages across the market. But it could also mean different things. Natural for a more constrained person could be a shift towards moving from bottled water to tap water. So again, there could be a lot of challenges there. And then last but not least, we'll talk about blends. So again, that could be cross brand collaboration as people try to partner and leverage existing trends. Again, we were talking about learning from other categories can be a big trend. We're seeing things like bubble tea starting to transcend into candy, into ice cream. We're seeing hard seltzer being a big winner as people are looking for more lighter beverages to consume. And again, this is a good example of trying to bring a hybrid of different dynamics. And we also can see that for more constrained shoppers, it could be things such as partnerships. So it could be working with NGOs to give beverages to households who may not be able to afford it, or also things like a shift towards more larger packs. One of the things we do believe will be a trend is that people who are more constrained will be looking to trade up to get more economies of scale. And again, those will be big opportunities which could help drive the rebound of beverages in Asia. So actually, within Nielsen IQ, we track over 1,300 categories across Asia. And on the right-hand side, highlighted in green, what we can see are some of the fastest growing country category combinations for beverages. So we can see that in things like normal beverages, we can see that coffee beans are doing very well, and capsule coffee. This is highlighting that people are trading up to bring that out-of-home cafe experience into home. And it's very, very healthy growth in terms of markets like Singapore, Korea. But even a huge market like China, we can see instant coffee is booming. So again, the coffee market is very attractive in the moment. Time will tell whether people that will transcend as people start to go out more and go back into coffee shops. However, the highlight of China doing very well for instant coffee does bode well, but we do believe that it'll be a longer-term trend. And the fact that people have moved a lot of their coffee consumption at home, have probably started to buy coffee machines at home, will be an invested opportunity. And as we mentioned, with the reality being that people will be spending maybe half a week working in the office and half a working week at home, they'll be wanting to have a coffee at home. We can also see for alcohol that there are trends in terms of ready to drink. We can see that beer is doing very well in the market like Korea, where in Korea anyway, you can see that people have moved a lot of their consumption back into home with things like bokbonjuju and soju doing very well. And we can see wine also being one of the big winners. Wine and spirits, as people have moved a lot of that out-of-home consumption into home. But again, as we look to the future, the fact that whiskey is doing very well in China does highlight that it doesn't necessarily mean that that consumption will move back out of home, especially for those people who are more constrained, who might be starting to drink more sociably at home to save money. And one of the big trends we are seeing is lighter alcohol doing very well. We can see that from the ready-to-drink alcohol, where things like low alcohol, alco pops coming through, brewed cocktail also boding well. So as people start to enjoy alcohol more responsibly, we can also see that there'll be opportunities. And also hard seltzer is one of the key drivers of that. We can also see from Nielsen IQ data that 0% alcohol is also booming as well. So we see a lot of innovation in this area. So we do believe that there will be some of the non-alcoholic beverage manufacturers might start looking more and more to the alcohol area, especially that lighter alcohol area, whether it could be mixers coming into the market or actually moving straight into the low alcohol area. as an opportunity for growth, because we do see alcohol being one of the big winners longer term. But actually what we want to share is that it's not just about looking at the categories, it's more about thinking outside the box. And what we're finding is that across Asia, consumers are not buying a category in particular. It's more about the consumption behavior and what they're trying to do. So what we can see is that a lot of people in Asia are actually trying to bring out-of-home consumption into home. That's why spirits are doing well. People are moving some of their meals into home. So again, anything which can bring a lot of trends that are coming from out of home, so can come into home. So we know that bubble tea is coming into the market. We know that there's a lot of out-of-home demand for things like kombucha, etc., which is now starting to come into home. So a huge opportunity is by being able to identify what are the big trends in terms of beverages out of home. What are people consuming in bars? What are people consuming in the malls? And trying to bring those trends into home. Also, another dynamic could be around the trend of some of the dairy alternatives. Again, beverages trying to leverage plant milk, etc. This can have an impact in terms of just normal beverages, in terms of the rise of coconut milk, coconut water, etc., but booming well. But also things such as people putting oat milk with their coffee. We know that coffee is one of the big winners. What could be the opportunity there? Could even be cocktails. People rather than using maybe some naturally milk-based drinks, starting to look at soy alternatives. And I think we can also see about making my life easier. Brewed cocktail. People don't want to be faffing around, having to get all the ingredients of a cocktail. In fact, we're starting to see a lot of cocktails now in convenient cans where people can enjoy that more easily. Will be another opportunity. So again, opportunities for people to try to bring more convenience will definitely be a trend. And then last but not least, about cooking up a storm. Cooking will be one of the big winners, but as we can show from an example, it's not just about ingredients, which mean that cooking can benefit. We highlight here air freshener is one of the big opportunities because people cook more at home, they'll want to bring more, they'll want to get rid of the smell in the house. But that's also an opportunity for beverages, because what it means is that people can start cooking with wine. Opportunity to educate people on how to cook with beverages, not just beverage being an accompaniment to the meal, but also as an ingredient. Again, it could be things like people having recipes which can leverage things such as carbonated soft drinks as an ingredient for a sauce, or it could be highlighting to people opportunities to have a more creativity at home as they're starting to cook more, and leveraging beverages as a way to do that. And also thinking about promotions and how we can partner with some of the faster growing categories. So just to summarize, the FMCG market in Asia has never been more dynamic. And even though it's starting to rebound in some markets, it may take a bit more time for certain categories and countries to come back. And what we're actually seeing is that alcohol and coffee are the big winners in FMCG as people are spending more time at home. However, it has been a bit more challenging for non-alcoholic beverages, given the fact that we have less tourists coming over. People are now not going to the office as much and going out. A lot of that consumption has dropped. However, what does bode well is that China has come back to normal, and we have seen non-alcoholic beverages come back. But you'll need to innovate to stimulate that growth. And again, when innovating, think about both the insulated and constrained consumer. There will be people who will be looking to cut back on their beverages, but there'll also be people who will be looking to further trade up. And there's a huge opportunity to innovate. And when innovate, think outside the box. There's a lot of learning from both what's happening out of home, what are the trends there, in terms of what will come back into home, and also learn from what's happening in other markets. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you learned a lot about the different dynamics in the beverage market across Asia. and I look forward to taking any questions that you may have. Thank you.